Hey, if you're new here, I'm Kate. I am originally from the East Coast US, but I have been living in Europe for 14 years. And before that, I was in San Francisco, which is West Coast US, working as a software engineer, which is just to say I have flown a lot of red-eye flights, both when I was still in university and basically pulling an all-nighter was no big deal. And now that I'm getting closer to 40 and missing a night's sleep is very much a big deal. Also, I have kids now, which I will talk about, but it's not going to be the focus of this video. First, I'm going to talk about like time zones and jet streams, kind of like boring stuff, but it'll be important later on. And next, I'm going to talk about sort of like the itinerary you can expect like during one of these long red-eye flights and like making a plan for it. Then I'll get to like the meat of the video, trying to get comfy like during that red-eye flight, both with or without kids. It's not really possible with kids, but I will share like what I have tried and what has worked and what hasn't. And then finally, I'll talk about like different seats. There are like, some things to consider when picking a seat. All right, so let's get to it. If you're going anywhere far away, either your outbound or your inbound flight, there's a good chance it could be a red eye. Actually, it's always gonna be your eastbound flight. That's because you're going in the opposite direction of the sun. Like pretend for a moment the earth is still and the sun goes around the earth, east to west, because that's how we perceive it. And that mental model is actually really useful when you are dealing with different time zones, which if you're flying far away, you probably are. So if you think of the sun moving from Asia to Europe to the east coast of the US to the west coast of the US, it's probably backwards for you guys, but that's for me. Then you never have to like ask or look up like if some other place is earlier in the day, then you have it in your head. You like understand, you have that mental model to know that like if where I am right now is noon, to the west of me, the sun hasn't gotten there yet. It's moving west. So there, it's still earlier in the day. The sun hasn't gotten there yet. So what does this have to do with long flights? For example, when I fly from Rome to Newark, a typical flight leaves at 11 a.m. and will arrive at just 2:30 in the afternoon. Even though that is a 9.5-hour flight, 6 of the hours are, you're time traveling, basically 6 of the hours of the time difference. And then it's just 3.5 hours later in the day from 11 to 2:30, even though you're spending 9.5 hours in the plane. And then the reverse happens on the return flight, the eastbound flight. So a typical flight would leave at like 8:30 in the evening and arrive at 11 the next morning. Now, this is actually a shorter flight. It's only 8.5 hours. I think of the jet streams. That's not my area of expertise. But, that the difference between leaving at 8:30 in the evening and arriving 11 the next day, now we're adding 6 hours to the flight time. So like it's that 8.5, actual flight time plus 6 hours time difference. So it's like this huge gap in time. And that huge gap in time is why the eastbound flight is, when you're going far away and you're going over a lot of time zones, very likely to be a red-eye flight. Maybe you'll have an option, but like from East Coast US to Europe, they're almost always red-eye flights. And this is a kind of like foundational knowledge for like planning out your flight. I'll use that like European, like East Coast US to Europe 8.5 hour example. But for example, if you're flying from like West Coast to East Coast US, you're actually gonna have even less hours. And thinking about this is going to be more important. So let's think about the itinerary of a flight. You lose like 30 to 40 minutes at least on either end for takeoff and landing. And, after takeoff, then there's going to be the dinner meal service. It could be right after we reach altitude, or if there's some turbulence, it could get pushed even later. Now they're going to do a round of drinks, then they're going to do a round serving dinner, and then they're going to do a round of trash cleanup. So for my example of that 8:30 flight, you take off around 8:30, it can easily be after midnight by the time the lights actually go down and you have that quiet time where everyone's encouraged to sleep. Now after midnight departure time, like East Coast US time, if it's midnight in New York, then it's already 6 a.m. in Italy. So now if you think about like just going to sleep, at 6 a.m., even if you fell asleep immediately once they turn the lights down, you don't have a lot of time before they turn the lights back on again and like repeat the process with the like morning breakfast meal service again, rounds of drinks. This time they'll offer tea and coffee, round of food. This time it's going to be something small like a sandwich. Depending on the airline, it could be like a yogurt or a croissant. And then again, the trash cleanup, and then you have to have your seat up and tray table up, for landing. All this is to say, like, the point of this is, you know, even if you have an 8-hour flight and, you know, could be longer or shorter than that, the actual time where the lights are off is going to be pretty short. So you know, what I recommend doing, probably like the biggest point I could make in this video is I eat before I get on the airplane, and I turn down the meal service and I start trying to sleep either like before we even take off, as soon as I'm in my seat, or once we reach altitude and I'm allowed to like take out some stuff and get more comfy. And then for breakfast, if I'm lucky, I sleep right through it. More often than not, like the noise and stuff, I will kind of like look around and see, oh, they're starting breakfast, and then I'll decide then if I want to keep trying to sleep or go back to sleep, or, you know, have the breakfast. So this is really like the biggest part of the video. I really want to try to get 4 hours of sleep on a flight. 6 would be much better. And that sleep is going to be restless, interrupted sleep on an airplane. Of course it is. So rather than, you know, staying up as late as possible, sorry, the cat, 1 second. Okay, back. So rather than staying up really late, watching a movie like as late as, and then, you know, trying to sleep for 2 hours, I try to sleep for as many hours as I can fit in that flight. Because of course the actual rest is going to only be a fraction of that. And like 7 hours of poor quality sleep is still way better than like 3 hours of poor quality sleep. Which is a good transition to the next part of the video. Like, this is all about quantity. Now let's start trying to talk about the quality of that sleep. So there's already a lot of advice and also like gear for sale around the idea of being more comfy on a flight. And of course, if you're in like a really nice first class seat, you probably have a lay flat bed, but I'm kind of talking about economy or economy plus seats. We'll talk more about seats at the end of the video. A friend of mine has a blow up pillow, like it's like a triangle thing. You put your arms to the side and like you rest your head, and this kind of makes it dark, and oh sorry, it sits on the tray table in front of you. So like that's one way to kind of sit, like take some weight off of yourself and get your head in like a stable position and comfy. That's not my favorite, but like she does that and that works really well for her. I also use like a blow up gadget, but it's a different one. It is, I'll have to go get it, but it is like a cube with like 2 sections you blow up, like, you know, like that. And then that's a footrest. And because it's blow up, you know, if I do it all the way, it's pretty big, but like not quite all the way filled, it like will fit to almost any space. And same thing with height. You know, I can, if I did them both all the way, it's like as high as the seat, but then I can do the smaller one, not at all or partially. And then, you know, then it's whatever height I want it to be. This works best for me because I have found what makes me the most uncomfortable sleeping in an airplane is having my feet down. I think my legs swell, and like, I'm not sure if I actually like feel them swelling or what, but I just feel like almost like compelled, like I really want my legs up. So having like that seat rest that's kind of almost level with my seat, and then I'm kind of like, you know, in this position with both my feet, and yeah, it's better than nothing. And of course, I think the most important gear you can have for the red eye is a eye mask and earplugs. The earplugs I get like come in a big old jar from Home Depot or Hammer Bar or whatever your country's version of that is, and like they're super cheap, and I just keep a bunch of them in my like airplane bag. And sleeping mask, I've tried a couple of them. Sometimes like the elastic can be right over the eyes and it's really uncomfortable. So like the ones that have either like 2 elastics or ones that are like super cushioned, and then they're nice and soft. Because again, circling back to what we talked about before, there's not many hours where the lights are down during the flight. So, you know, if I'm going to sleep to the meal service, you know, that's gonna be really hard, the lights on, people walking around, if I don't have my eyes covered with a sleeping mask. And same thing with the earplugs. Like, you know, yes, it doesn't like completely block out everything, but it really does do a good job turning down the volume. I have also used noise canceling headphones. They can be nice too. I guess it kind of depends like what you prefer, what's more comfortable for you. And of course I promised to talk about kids. I don't want to go into like the bigger topic of traveling with kids because I could talk for half an hour on just that. But I do want to talk a little bit about like positioning yourselves, like when you do have like the whole kind of row for your family. If you are thinking that someone can sleep across the floor, for one, that's not allowed, although really big variety in how much that gets enforced. I've definitely been on flights where lots of people are sleeping on the floor. But I did try it myself. You know, it was regular economy, so it's like there's like this big a gap between like where our knees are, like not even gonna like fit down there, but I did fit down there. There was like a much bigger man like diagonal from us. He was down there, so like surely I can fit too. But it is freezing down there. It is so cold. I don't think you can expect anyone in your family, your kids, or yourself to sleep on what feels like ice. It's like, you know, I guess underneath our feet is like the suitcase area that's not, you know, pressurized or temperature controlled. And yeah, you feel it with just like your feet from your seat. Like it's cold down there, and when you're actually laying on that floor, it is ice cold. So I wouldn't count on anyone being able to lay down there. I've got 2 kids, and how we've kind of arranged ourselves during naps on daytime flights or red-eye flights, you know, has changed as they've grown. When they were really little, you know, the bigger one could take 2 seats for her and her sister, and like I could hold the little one. Not super easy to sleep that way, but you know, it is what it is. As they've gotten bigger, they kind of sleep sort of on top of each other and on top of my lap. Yeah, again, it kind of changes every time, and like how we can get them comfortable. My like seat rest cushion is a new thing. I want to get 2 more so I can kind of like block off like both of like their 2 seats, so maybe they can kind of sleep sort of next to each other, on top of each other, in like the 2 of them in their 2 seats. I have also done a similar thing before I discovered my like blow up seat rest. Is I've just taken our overhead, you know, luggage and put it next to the kids. So again, if they rolled off that seat, there's not too far to roll. There's like something kind of there to stop them. But speaking of rolling off the seat, like, so they have to wear a seatbelt. Everyone does. You know, even when they're sleeping in a red eye. So if the kid's laying down, that seatbelt has to be like over them and like over the blanket, invisible. So that's what we do. Now, granted, they're laying down, so that's not how the seatbelt is meant to be used. You know, my choice as a parent is to balance them getting some rest, which is important for lots of reasons. Also, like when you're flying, exposed to million germs. Like, you know, that aspect of safety is also important to me. But if the aspect of like physical safety is the most important thing to you, then maybe you want to keep your kids in more of like a seated position, and that's going to be like a whole different thing. This is what like we do with our family, is just try to get everyone as comfy as possible, balancing, you know, safety and the need for sleep and all the different things. Back again to like very small babies. If you still have them in a car seat, you know, they're golden, they're going to be comfy, they're going to be very safe. You can also, when they're very small, request a bassinet on many airlines. To follow like the really big ones like United for sure. And so this is like a bassinet, like a square thing. It like snaps onto the wall in front of that bulkhead row. So you get the bulkhead row for free, you know, but only one family in the whole flight can get this. So you gotta call pretty early and request it. And then, you know, if it hasn't been requested already, you will get seated in the bulkhead row. At least when I did it, my kids are a little older now, 5 and 8, but you know, you get put in the bulkhead row as part of this bassinet thing, and then you have like a bassinet that's like attached to the wall. So yeah, really good option, but you do have to ask for it really quickly because only one family gets it. Only other thing I want to mention about like red eyes in children is it's going to be difficult for the kids to sleep in a way that's not what they're used to, just like it is for us. And they're going to be unhappy about it and uncomfortable and tired, just like us. And what do kids do when they're unhappy and tired but can't sleep? They cry. It's really like almost inevitable. And if you're like the parent, like walking with that little baby, like anyone with half a brain and half a heart knows that like you as the parent have it worse than like any of us else in the plane who's watching you do that. So like you don't need to feel guilty about anything. You're not doing anything wrong. And anyone in that plane that like looks at that parent and doesn't have sympathy doesn't deserve your sympathy. So do not feel bad if anyone like looks cranky at your crying child, like when you're doing all that you can. So just to say that. Okay, the last topic is we're going to talk about seats. Now, a lot of tips about like just flying and picking seats in general, like of course also Blood or Red Eye. You know, you can go to things like Seat Guru and like see your plane and know the layout. You can choose to upgrade on just the red eye direction of your flight and not the you know, the daytime version of leg of your flight. I will do this pretty often. So like I mentioned, first class, I don't go first class. You know, even if I had that much money in my travel budget, I would rather take 3 trips for the same price than that one first class trip. But I do pretty often pay for the economy plus upgrade, but I'll do it on just the red eye one. I won't do it for the daytime flight. One other thing I kind of hinted at it like right in the beginning, you know, especially for flying to Europe, like if you fly in February, it might be like $300 and you'll be in a half empty, you know, airplane. In the summer, it's going to be like $1,000, you know, for each ticket, and they're going to be like bumping people. It's huge difference in demand and huge difference in price. So, you know, if you're not quite sure if you're in high season or low season or how busy your flight is, you can look at the seat map like immediately before your flight and have a pretty good idea. And if like there's a lot of empty seats, you know, everyone always wants to sit as close to the front as you can. But for a red eye, if it's low season, if there's a lot of room, go back. Go like, you know, short of that very last row that doesn't recline. Go to Seat Guru for that kind of info. You know, take a row really far to the back, you know, sit in that like middle block of 4 if this is a big airplane, and you know, you might get a row of 4 yourself. And then it's, you know, you basically got like the first class, you know, experience. Not quite, you know, sitting across 4 isn't the same as a flat bed, and there's no free, you know, nice food. Cat. But yeah, check it, and if it's, you know, low season, you know, don't go for the front seat. Go for the back if it's really empty. All right, what else do I know about seats? I will say that if you are flying with a pet, then you cannot sit in the bulkhead row. There's different ways to fly with a pet. You can have the pet go with luggage, if you have a large dog or something, but if you have a cat or a small dog, you can have your pet with you in a cabin. This is getting way off topic, but if you sit in the bulkhead row, you don't have, you know, the seat in front of you, right? You have the wall in front of you. So if you have a cat, don't take the bulkhead row because, you know, you need to sit where there's a seat in front of you. But that applies even if you don't have a cat. Like if you have any things you really want to have during takeoff and landing, the bulkhead row, you have to put all of your stuff overhead during takeoff and landing because you don't have under your seat to leave that area open. And of course, there's just the normal advice, like, you know, if you're debating aisle and window, the, you know, the window seat has to ask to get up to go to the bathroom, and the aisle seat has to get up when the person inside, you know, wants to go to the bathroom. So you're kind of debating between those two things. You know, if you know you have to pee or roll out, maybe you want the aisle. I tend to prefer the window because you have, like, planes are round, so you have that little, like, extra space of, you know, like where your seat ends, you have that little space there. And sometimes, like, you know, I'm able to get into some different positions, you know, by having the wall next to me rather than the hallway next to me. And I guess my last tip for seats, you know, again, this is kind of like a generic tip that applies, like, you know, not just for a red eye, but like a trick to maybe get an extra seat. If you're 2 people and they're like rows of 3, rather than taking 2 seats next to each other, like take the window and the aisle and leave the middle free. Maybe you get lucky and no one takes that middle seat, you know, or if they do, like 99 people out of 100 will be very, very happy if you say, like, oh, do you want to, like, can we have your middle seat? And you can have either our window or our aisle seat, and then you sit together. Yeah, that's like a nice way to maybe get lucky and get an extra seat, because like I said, everyone picks their seats, you know, all the aisles and all the windows go before the middle seats go. Kind of similar to that, if you're flying with kids, then they have to put the kids with an adult. Like, they're not going to, you know, put me in row 10 and my kids in row 15. Like, nobody wants that, and they're not going to do that. So what I normally do is, I know I don't pay for the seats, especially for the daytime flight, but then I call the airline and I say, like, can you just, like, make sure that we're together, and that, like, we're really together, rather than like we have the aisle between us, or like we're front and back, because they want you, like, really together. They want to keep, like, you know, families with small children together, but they if like the computer is doing this automatically, sometimes, you know, when it's doing it later, there's not a lot of seats left, so it'll, you know, might not be great. But yeah, small children, they're definitely gonna be with their parents, so you don't have to pay extra for that. But if you want to be, like, sure that you, like, have seats that make sense together, rather than they're just, like, technically together, because once you're on the plane and everyone has their seats, there's nothing anyone can do about it, except, like, ask people to switch, and it becomes a mess. So again, it works out as for everyone. If you want to not pay for the seats, then call. That's a trick that I do for seats. And now I'm just kind of rambling, and I've made this video too long, so I will, you know, say goodbye. I haven't made a ton of travel videos. I made more like home organization and productivity videos. but I do travel a lot. So, you know, for my channel, I can talk what I want to talk about. Anyway, I'll put, I'll leave Google to suggest something it thinks you'll like up here. And hopefully I will see you over in another video. Thanks for watching, and good luck getting some C's on your next flight.